Welcome to the Lakeshow podcast presented by Jack in the Box. This is a weekly deep dive into the biggest stories and topics surrounding the Los Angeles Lakers. I'm Chris McGee. We got the Laker insider Mike Bresnahan. We got Laker reporter Mike Trudell. Mike, welcome. You were just over at the facility.
Yeah.
With the press conference for the new rookies.
Well, nice to see you fellas. It was a nice moment to welcome them into the community.
Yeah.
And I think what I'm excited about, though, Geeter, we only have to wait a couple of days to actually see them on a basketball court.
Yeah, I love that.
Not to skip ahead.
Yeah.
Today, Brez, I think you could tell, I think both of them they've done a series of interviews at this point, right? They've spoken to Rob Pelinka, they've spoken to JJ Redick, and I think for them too, they're excited about the basketball part of this, and that's always the good reminder, right? Getting on the court.
More exciting for you, Copa America press conference.
The Euros.
The Euros. But, I was going to say the Euros too, because the U.S. is out now. So
yeah, Copa America's useless.
No, look, the press conference above all, for sure. That's the most relevant to our lives. Am I enjoying watching all of the soccer that is on? Yes. I did not get a chance to ask Bronny or Dalton Knecht if they are viewers of soccer.
Yeah.
That will come up, though, over the weekend once we get up to
and by the way, you Brez is kind of dialed in on his U.S. men's soccer.
Yeah.
It's not like you know anything else about a lot of the
Correct.
MLS, right? But you know your men's.
I watch soccer once every 2 years.
Yeah.
For this time of year, Copa America, Euro Cup, and then the World Cup.
Yeah.
I know nothing about Man U. I know Mike's gonna be really disappointed in me. I'm watching Wrexham. I'm in the first season of that.
Great documentary.
I watched Ted Lasso, of course.
Great
so
show.
I'm like soccer adjacent. I'm like soccer ash.
You appreciate it. You're like me.
Yeah, I love international
That's how I am.
competitions. My club, I don't watch.
Well, back in like the late 90s,
Please don't hate me.
Even the early 2000s, there was soccer was still kind of coming up to the point where we felt like we had to defend the sport. We're not there anymore. There are plenty of people are watching like it. So you guys do what you want.
You know what? You know when
I'm not bothered.
You know when I first got going and really excited? 1994.
Okay.
World Cup.
Lexi Lawless.
Did you go to the Rose
That was
Bowl?
also here in the United States.
Yeah.
And I was in Huntington on the 4th of July, and it was a huge match for the U.S. So
Was that the year you were on Price is Right? Price is Right?
Price is Right was 1994.
Wow.
That's impressive.
True. The historian, the
impressive.
Geeter
That's
historian.
Google it. Chris McGee.
That was
Price
really
is
good by
Right.
you. Really good by you. Thanks, Mike.
Win a
All
car.
right. The Lakers introduced their 2024 draft picks, Dalton Knecht and Bronny James. Let's hear from the newest draft picks on joining the Lakers.
I think it's going to be a lot of fun just getting out on the court with all the guys and, the first couple of days learning from JJ when he'll be there and start the season, go to the Summer League and hopefully go win that and then just go on and get the regular season started.
Just coming in and trying to get better. Rob has told me that there's a great development system here. So I just want to come in and get my work in and get better every day. But I never really had a thought of, me going to play with my dad, but that's always, there to, take part of. But that wasn't a main focus of mine to do.
Me and Coach Barnes, we watched a lot of JJ Redick and how he comes off screens, gets openings, creating space even before he runs off the screen. So I'm excited just to learn from him and see how he sees the game.
For sure, the amplified amount of pressure. I've already seen it, stuff, media and stuff in the internet and stuff, talking about I might not deserve an opportunity, but I've been dealing with stuff like this for my whole life. So it's nothing different, but it's more amplified for sure. But I can get through it.
So both players expected to play in California Classic and Las Vegas Summer League, according to Lakers head coach JJ Redick. We learned that as well. I know that's exciting, Bress, because we didn't, you never know who's playing.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially Bronny. Like you want to make sure that he's ready to go. He's I'm really eager to watch him play. I mean, saw very little of him at USC. Obviously, he started the season late because of the medical scare a few months earlier. But what can he give to the Lakers Summer League team? And I like what he said today. He said, you know what? People view me. They realize I'm not a really big guard. So I need to keep working on my defense for sure.
Yeah.
And I like what Knecht told you, Mike. You got a couple one-on-ones, one with each of those guys. And you asked Knecht, look, you were supposed to be like top 6. You dropped all the way to 17. And by the way, I did a quick math analysis of that. I mean, that's like at least $15 million differential over the next 4 years, maybe close to 20 between 6 and 17. Not that he can help that, but you asked him about the drop, and he said, you know what? I've always had a chip in my shoulder, and now it's even bigger because of that precipitous drop. I mean, what a great pickup for the Lakers. I'm really excited about him too, Mike.
Yeah, in a different way, that made me think about Austin Reeves, who came in with the chip. In a similar story of not that highly recruited, but at least Reeves was recruited to major D1 programs. He starts out at Wichita State and then gets over to Oklahoma eventually. But, Knecht wasn't even recruited at all, has to go to junior college. And that initial chip, I think that if it's on a player of that then goes and proves it, Geeter, on the court, that they show you why it's a chip. Well, because they worked their blanks off. And that's, I think, the type of guy that Knecht is. So that plus the growth spurt that he had, where he goes from being a smaller guard to being, 6'7", and to be able to get off his shot like he can. He's not just a shooter, and that he's got enough pop athletically, like 39-inch vertical. So if you close out on him, he can get to the rim in 1 or 2 steps and finish at the rim. So there's some at 23, like he can help, I think, the Lakers now. And to stick it short term.
No, go. Keep going.
I was just thinking, so Cali Classic, that I expect Knecht to do some things, in games like this, because this is still a high level of competition, but he is going to be one of the more seasoned players, certainly, I think, on the Lakers roster. And so I'm excited to see how that looks.
Totally different philosophy than last year, right? When you draft Jalen Hood-Schifino, they weren't drafting a guy that was going to come in and be an impact guy. There were guys that were older, further along, that went after Jalen Hood-Schifino. So I've always said you can't really judge that until you see him a few years down the road. It has a totally different feeling with Dalton Knecht. I agree with you. He feels like that Austin Reeves, Alex Caruso guy, where maybe it's not immediate, but you can see a world in his rookie year where he cracks the rotation and he's playing a role.
JJ Redick did not have to pile on with the excitement like he did today. He was genuinely excited about coaching Dalton Knecht, and it was evident in his comments. And these press conferences, what coach is going to say, we were disappointed we drafted this guy. I mean, obviously they skew towards optimistic, a lot of looking into the future. But you want a few things with any player you draft. Obviously, a good player, how's his fit in the system? That's number 2. And number 3 is value. You don't want to feel like you're reaching for a guy that you can maybe get in a later round and whatnot. The Lakers got all 3. They got great value. We already covered that. 11 picks later than he was mocked to be at. Good player, obviously, just on the court. And he fits the system. It seems like he's going to be a good fit for J.J. Redick's system. So they check 3 boxes by taking Dalton Knecht. And J.J. Redick, it's funny. Some of these responses are kind of staged. When every team on draft night, they show the war room and the pick is here. Oh yeah, this is the guy we wanted.
No, it was real.
It was real for the Lakers. When
he wasn't supposed to be there.
He was supposed to be gone.
It was a no-brainer.
Yeah, like an hour and a half earlier in draft time, he was supposed to be off the board.
I bet the panic was, oh my God, they're going to take him at 16.
Yeah,
We're
exactly.
going to miss him because you start to get excited about him.
Yeah, he was there.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable.
Yeah, for sure. So that part of it is exciting, and we're going to get to see pretty soon, I think, what is evident on tape from all that Knecht has already produced, because there's a lot on tape. And for me, I'm going to be looking at Bronny in a much different lens of he's 19.
Please have patience, everybody.
Yeah, he didn't play a ton at USC. He's just now probably gotten to the point where, I don't even know, it hasn't been a full calendar year yet, right, since the incident at USC. And just think about that, just the how thankful he was and his family was for him to get through that health crisis and then to be able to play at USC. So when I watch the USC game tape, I'm like, okay, you can take a couple things from it, but I'm more interested in giving him this whole season to actually get back to all of the talent that had him as a McDonald's All-American.
Yeah.
That whole part of Bronny, that's going to come. Do I need to see that on Saturday in San Francisco to the same level that we're expecting Dalton Knecht, who just came off being an All-American and being the player of the year in the SEC? No, and I hope that's a perspective that is a little bit more widely shared.
I'm actually glad you brought that up, Mike, because that's kind of what I was going to lead you guys with. We've seen it here, especially with young Lakers. I remember Lonzo Ball, Brandon Ingram, and the list goes on and on with young Lakers that were drafted here with the spotlight on them. Bronny wasn't the number 2 overall pick, but we have followed his career forever, obviously with LeBron being here in the Lakers. And like you had mentioned, Brez, I think during our show, he's at Sierra Canyon. Some of those games are televised. We're watching and we're following Bronny, especially in this day and age of social media and the access that we have. I hope there's patience, because I remember Lonzo's first game in Summer League. Everyone's panicking. And then game 2, he's got a triple-double. So, let's be excited for this young man.
Yeah.
And let's, like Mike said, let's let him get better and get back into, playing at a high level where he was before. the incident a summer ago, and I'm excited to see where he goes.
I grabbed one quote. I grabbed a few quotes from the press conference. One really, I think, identifies who he is. This 19-year-old has been through a lot. He's not your typical 19-year-old. You mentioned the medical scare of a year ago, Mike. He's grown up around a very famous dad in the NBA. And someone said, hey, is there pressure on you, alluding that there's some social media criticisms. It's going to be really intense. It could be really intense anyway if he has a slow start. Whatever. I look at Bronny said. He said, I try not to care what other people think about me because there's a lot of people that have something to say. I've never heard a 19-year-old sound that mature at a draft press conference. I mean, this guy's years beyond his actual age.
Right, Brez?
Absolutely.
Like, in terms of being a pro, I'm super impressed with how he handles himself, and that's a big part of it, right? I mean, he could act totally different, but he's like he was built for these kind of moments. It's cool.
I mean, he was courtside when his dad passed Kareem to become the all-time leading scorer. He's been watching his dad play. I mean, his dad started in the NBA a year or two before Bronny was born. I mean, it's just so crazy to think about that. And so he really did grow up on the doorstep of the NBA. That doesn't guarantee you an NBA career. I mean, so look at Shaq's kid.
Yeah.
Shaq will be the first to tell you. In fact, Shaq didn't want his son to enter the draft early, and he did. And obviously, his pro career, his NBA career, never took off. But you look at Bronny and LeBron, and it's crazy how it did work out perfectly for both those guys.
Obviously, this is the NBA, but no matter what the sport, I always feel like, once a young person gets around their team and gets to be a part of the team, then you can start to see the real personality, and they can also start to relax a little bit, especially these guys that are getting drafted. I mean, so much hype goes into this, so much work goes into it. Now you can just be a basketball player.
Yeah, for sure. We were talking earlier about the chip on the shoulder for Dalton Knecht, and I think in the way that Bronny, whatever the comments that he's focused on or seen over the years, well, he probably also wants to show what he can do as a basketball player. And that chip on his shoulder of somebody that's going to tell him, you're only in the league because of this. And well, now, as Gator just alluded to, he gets the chance to actually focus full-time on the basketball. And he gets to be in the gym every day. And, hopefully I haven't asked him this yet, so I don't know what their plan is, but hopefully he gets a lot of minutes like with the South Bay Lakers, if that's what he wants, which is another great place to really develop and really get a lot of those minutes. And, you had mentioned Alex Caruso earlier. Caruso had, before he came to the Lakers, he had the previous year in OKC. Playing a lot in the G League, and kind of really having people buy into all that he did as somebody that wasn't as highly touted. And, I think that, Bronny is shorter, but there are some similarities defensively in the way of the point of attack that we've seen. And I thought that Rob Pelinka at the end of the press conference brought up, because I asked Bronny about the point of attack. Yeah. He brought up, well, we also think that Bronny can be a real attack downhill guard getting to the rim, which is something that the Lakers have been looking for the last couple of years. And so these are all things now that we get to evaluate, over the course of not just this initial weekend and not just the first Summer League game in Vegas, which of course, Bronny probably more so than the number one pick, Risa Shea or Alex Sarr, the people are going to be wanting to see what Bronny does. And I hope that success does not need to be 25 points on, 15 shots. I don't think that that's something that should be the expectation.
All right, Brad Turner of the LA Times, our friend, reporting that the Lakers have interest in talking to former NBA coach Alvin Gentry to make him a part of the Lakers coaching staff. What are your thoughts on that, Brez? You and I have been talking a lot about this over the last couple of weeks, especially since the hiring of JJ, in terms of what kind of staff. Obviously, the notion of bringing in a former head coach.
Yeah, I love Alvin Gentry. Known him for years. Fun with the media, good coach. Head coach in plenty of different places. He's got what the Lakers need. I think they need two guys on that staff, in addition to JJ, who have NBA head coaching experience. And Alvin's definitely one of those guys that would check that box. He's been a consultant for the Sacramento Kings for the last year or two, but he probably wants to get back into it a little bit. And I always remember him out here in LA when the Pels, when they still had AD, were going to play the Lakers, and I went out to cover the shoot around. And Alvin, after many questions from the local media, said, we are not trading Anthony Davis. And of course, a month or two later, they ended up trading Anthony Davis. But Alvin's seen it all. He's dealt with players' egos, players' personalities, and I like him as just a sounding board he's almost 70 years old. He's been in the NBA a long time. I think he'd be a good fit for the staff.
Yeah, so I want to say, first of all, I've been very impressed with JJ Redick and just how he's answered questions, the way that he's talked about coaching, the way that he's talked about building a staff. So I think that Redick is one of those guys that's going to figure out the way to succeed. He clearly has been like that in his own life. I do also think that having coaching experience and somebody like a Gentry, somebody that has all that NBA experience, can only be helpful, right? And Redick probably has a relationship with him. Gentry's one of those guys that just knows everybody. You know, when you go into an arena and we see it, right? We're sitting there, or Geeter, if you're coming down for a game and you're sitting courtside, and you can see some of those coaches who just they go down the line, next guy,
Everybody knows.
It's a wedding reception.
Yeah, so those guys I think are great for the NBA, right? Those there's a connective tissue to the league. Of course, all the teams are trying to win and selfishly in their own right, but the people that can last like that, I think, are great. So I'm very curious to see how Redick fills out and balances his staff, but he does strike me as somebody that's going to be able to figure this out, whether he gets the most experienced assistant coach or somebody that's young and fiery, and ideally it's a combination of both.
All right, guys, in NBA free agency, the Lakers haven't added any players in trades or free agency. At the rookie's introductory press conference, Rob Pelinka discussed how active the Lakers are going to be this summer.
I think we're going to always be aggressive to trying to make roster upgrades, and we'll be relentless to continue to look at what we can do. As you pointed out, we have 14 guys under guaranteed contract with one space. And this is the season of being mindful of all the different things we can approach to improve the roster. So we're in the midst of that as we speak. That'll continue in the coming days, and it often spills into, Vegas, where all the GMs meet and gather and other deals get done. But yeah, we'll stay aggressive.
Rob, I'll follow that just along the same lines, but we've talked about, even at JJ's introductory press conference, but the future draft picks that you guys have available to trade. Is this a situation where we could be like in years past, where you continue to canvass things up to February, just knowing that you have that and just looking for ways to improve?
Yeah, I think if the right deal comes and we have to put in draft picks, we will. I think we've talked about it before. We're now in the apron world. We've seen, contending teams or championship level teams have to lose players. That's a result of the apron world we're living in. So does it make trades more challenging? Yes. Does it make good trades impossible? No. So we'll continue to pursue upgrades to our roster.
Reaction to what Rob was talking about?
Yeah, I mean, he's 100% right. I mean, the new rules really make it difficult for the big franchises who are willing to spend, willing to acquire a bunch of salary. It makes it a lot harder for this to happen. Like the Pau Gasol trade in 2008, where it was Kwame Brown and Marc Gasol, who was a draft pick at the time, turned out to be a pretty good player. It's going to be really hard to make trades like that happen again. And Laker fans need to be a little patient. And it's been the slowest free agency start that I can remember in a long time. Very few. I feel like teams are being very deliberate about a lot of their signings. And Rob's right. It's a whole new world, and it favors the teams that aren't very good. Frankly, it's going to lead to more parity more rapidly in the NBA, Mike.
Yeah, I think the thing that has changed the most for me has been that free agency has just diminished year over year. Yeah. And what you have now is teams more willing and more likely to lock in and extend players. And with the money being what it is now and how much that's risen, mostly because of the TV revenue and everything, it's just very difficult for a player not to take that extension. Now, does that eventually lead to trades happening, and maybe trades are going to be more frequent as they go on? Yes, but then also the apron, as Rob just got into, Bresnahan, you touched on, that can complicate things on the other end. So it is really it's a narrow channel that you have to try to swim through. And I think that's a challenge for every front office, but the Lakers, just by being LA, and we all know this, we've lived here now for a long time. You, of course, growing up here, it's a pretty good spot to be in. The Lakers franchise, I think a lot of players over the years and will continue to want to play for them. Yeah. And how does that change with free agency being less common now, and players just sort of waiting for their contract to end and then getting to choose where they go? So that's all to be seen. But as Rob just said, it doesn't mean you can't thread the needle, and that's what they're going to try to do.
Yeah. Lakers reportedly interested in DeMar DeRozan in a possible sign and trade scenario, maybe the mid-level. What are you hearing, Press?
Yeah, a sign and trade would get him more money, but you're gonna have to part with a player. You know, I like the.
That's the problem with the sign and trade. You actually have to trade away.
The trade's in there for a reason, right?
Yeah.
As opposed to if DeMar just comes via the mid-level, which is slightly under $13 million at $12.8 million, it would be just a free agent signing, and the Lakers, as of now, can do that. Once LeBron signs, if he accepts the max deal, that 12.8 drops down to about 5. So it's a big difference between the full mid-level and what they call the taxpayer mid-level. So yeah, I mean DeMar DeRozan, even $12.8 million, that's a pay cut, a substantial pay cut from what he's been making for years and years. So if the Lakers can execute a sign and trade, could probably get that number up closer to 20 something. And again, he's at the end of his career, towards the end of his career. He's 34. He's not going to help them with 3-point shooting, but I love his 2-point game, Mike. His mid-range is incredible, and I love how he attacks the basket. Always one of the league leaders in like free throw attempts, and he's a pretty fearless player.
Yeah, the Lakers are in such an interesting spot because on the one hand, you know, they were so close in all of the games against Denver, but then just won the one, and then Denver ends up losing in the next round. We see how good Dallas is. We see that Minnesota has taken a step. We see other teams that have improved themselves, especially OKC this summer. We see New Orleans making a deal. Like that, there are so many good teams now, and the Lakers are one of them. But what do they really need to kind of get over the hump and put themselves in the best position to play against these teams? And, you know, whether it's one free agent, Brez, whether it's, to me, they have a lot of players who are really good players. Does there need to be some sort of consolidation trade at some point? Whether that's in the summer, whether that's in the season, there are a lot of different directions to go in. And I think that at least the good news is they have a lot of good players. And how does J.J. Redick want to use them? That's another thing I'm super curious about. When he's been in those rooms now, okay, here's what I've seen from the outside. What do you guys think from being there? LeBron, what do you think? AD, what do you think?
Yeah.
Austin Reeves, what's the key to your summer? Jared Vanderbilt, how close are you getting to be at that full game health right after the season? There are so many questions, and yet this is a team that has better continuity than some other teams. So it's a little bit wild, wild west, I feel like, in the Western Conference right now, and the Lakers are right there in that mix.
All right, guys, Lakeshow fans, remember, you can be part of the show each week. Feel free to send us your questions and comments. We'd love to hear from you. Taking a break, but when we return, a round of Bucket or Brick. Welcome back to the Lakeshow podcast presented by Jack in the Box. If you're enjoying the show, you can check out more original podcasts from our Spectrum News journalists on the Spectrum News app. Just head to the podcast section to listen to the latest episodes. You can download the Spectrum News app on the App Store or Google Play. Time for a round of Bucket or Brick presented by Jack in the Box. Brez, you're up first. Bucket or Brick? The Lakers will make a trade this offseason.
Yeah, I'm going to brick it.
You're going to brick it, aren't you, buddy?
I'm going to brick it.
Was that just because you had the brick in your hand?
I think
and
so.
Not the okay. All right.
If I had that ball, I would have absolutely bucketed it. Yeah, I think Rob's right. And if you read between the lines, yeah, it's hard to make a trade. We just went over it. I don't have to add too much more to it. I think that their big acquisition is going to have to be through the MLE, the mid-level exception.
All right, Mike Trudell, Bucket or Brick?
Just going to finger roll bucket that.
Yeah.
I do think that the
because you're
trade
holding
will
the
be
ball?
made, and whether that's not, well, I'll put it this way, not necessarily a major one, but just more of a consolidation type of trade, and like a spot that I still think would be helpful on the roster would be having another defensive-oriented big, so that AD doesn't have to do as much on that end, and of course, AD's still going to do everything when he's on the court, but just somebody who can kind of keep the defense afloat. Maybe if that player is out there somewhere else, maybe that's a place that could be looked at.
Bucket or Brick? Mike Trudell, I'm going to you first. LeBron James signing news will happen before the start of Team USA training camp, which is July 6th.
I'm going to go bucket for that one. I just feel like that's something that not take out the Bronny stuff aside, but not, I feel like that would help in certain ways. But this has just always been a really good scenario and situation for LeBron since he came here. And it hasn't always been perfect in the way that at like the bubble title, they win the title the next year, the whole team is exhausted because they have to start the next regular season. Then you have the Westbrook trade. Like there's some machinations that have gone on, but overall, I feel like this has been a good marriage for both sides, and would like to see that continue.
Brez?
Yeah, I'm going to bucket this too, simply because he's going to start playing games again. Like Team USA, I'm sure they're not going to have a full scrimmage on the first day that they're all hanging out in Vegas together. But he wants to make sure he's safe in case he sprains an ankle or something. I mean, get pen to paper before you start playing. I think that's going to happen.
Just going to let everyone know that Ryan Trainer, our producer, I can't hear you, so I think you were trying to talk to me. Just going to say that because it's a podcast and I can. Bucket or brick, Brez, I'm staying with you. Klay Thompson leaving Golden State was the biggest surprise of free agency.
No, writing on the wall for that. Look, he lost his starting job past the midpoint of last season. He got it back towards the end of it because he was playing so well off the bench. But, hey, he and Steph, 11 years together. That's a pretty good run right there. And just sure seemed like Klay was on the way out.
By the way, Trainer came into my ear and said I wasn't talking to you, just so you know. I heard some mumbling,
I think he was
so
talking to
maybe
me.
he was talking
Yeah.
to Brez.
Well,
and,
I'm always happy for a little shout out to Philly's finest.
yeah, Philly's finest.
right.
Yeah, he got Paul George, didn't he?
Well, that's where I was going to go.
Yeah.
With Brick, because I think that the George situation was more of a surprise, just in that for everything that was clear that Paul George didn't just sort of take the contract that apparently had been there for a while, I still think most people around the league expected him to stay.
We all did.
And expected that to work out there. And that's a big deal. Paul George is an all-star, excellent player when he's healthy.
He's one of the better players in the league, right?
Yeah, 100%. All-NBA caliber for
Yeah.
sure. I think you had to consider him as part of the All-NBA third team, right on that borderline, with Jaylen Brown. So to me, that was more of a surprise than the Klay situation, which just seemed like it had run its course. Now, long term, he'll be remembered as the legend of all time there with Steph and Draymond. That'll all smooth over in a couple of years, but that was a surprise.
By
So
the way,
bucket or brick?
PG, 5 first-rounders and Shea Gilgeous. That's what it cost
Truly
the
incredible.
Clippers.
Truly incredible.
He's
Sam
gone
Presti
5
doing
years
work.
later.
Bucket or brick? Clippers are the biggest losers in free agency, Mike.
Oh, biggest losers in free agency. I mean, I'm going to... Just because we were talking about Paul George, I'll bucket that. I think he was the best player to change teams.
Yeah.
And so that in its own right.
When you lose that for nothing, it's hard.
That's just of significance. So now they end up signing Derrick Jones Jr. and I like Derrick Jones Jr. I think that's he's a good player, excellent defensively, athleticism. The three kind of came and went in the postseason. But to me, just purely on the talent play of Paul George, I guess I would go there.
Yeah, this is, some people might say Golden State losing Klay. I actually like their save. They got DeAnthony Melton, who is not Klay, but a pretty good defensive-minded guard who can stick some threes too. The Clippers, though, I just don't see the comparisons between Derrick Jones Jr. and Paul George.
All right, number 5, bucket or brick. Lauri Markkanen will still be with the Jazz at the start of the season, Brez.
I'm going to bucket it. Again, trades have been so few and far between. Even the draft last week, the NBA said, okay, we're going to make it 2 days instead of 1 because teams complain they don't have enough time to trade. It's a little chaotic on one night. There still wasn't a lot of trading going on. I feel like it's just, I think he stays. By the way, damn good player.
Good player.
I'd like to have him.
Bucket to stay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Use glass that time. We ignore the glass too often.
Yeah.
in this game. So, to me, Utah is in a position clearly of the long rebuild. We know what Danny Ainge did in Boston and how that eventually turned out. So he's not going to be judged for many years down the line. But Markkanen is still young enough, and they still need a player of that salary and a player to sort of put on the billboards. I don't see the real benefit for Utah to ship him. They already have a ton of picks. They have all of Minnesota's picks, right? They have a bunch of Cleveland's picks.
Yeah.
They have a Lakers pick, right, from the Westbrook trade.
Yeah.
So there's a lot to me that they already have that they don't need to go and move Markkanen unless they were given some young player that they liked even more. And that's hard to believe that they would get because Markkanen is right. He's not quite in that conversation we're having about All-NBA, but he's starting to get into an all-star conversation if he keeps up his trajectory for sure. So I would not see why Utah would want to part with him, really.
Nice job, guys. Bonus question. The tweet by James Worthy sent Laker fans into a complete panic as one of the all-time things of the summer of 2024.
Bucket.
Yeah.
Bucket. Absolute bucket.
Look, I just think that he is such a legend, and you guys would know more than anybody. You actually get to spend time with him here in the studio. I'm always jealous, but I just get to see him quickly at the arena. That even the hint that he would go away would cause a panic just shows how great he is.
Just shows how great he is.
I did like his.
By the way, I didn't realize it on Twitter. We're about to do the press conference show. People W2F. Where's James Worthy? I'm like, he's playing golf. He's chilling. He's doing what he always does in July.
Yes.
Every single summer.
So let him play golf.
Let him be.
Yeah.
James Worthy is still
He is not
Our
working
fearless
in
leader.
July.
Fearless leader is still here. Still the face of the franchise.
That's right.
On Spectrum SportsNet. All right. Thanks for listening to the Lake Show podcast presented by Jack in the Box. If you like what you hear, leave us a rating and review on your favorite podcast app. We want to hear from you. Send us your questions. Hit us up on X, Geeter3, Mike_Bresnahan, Mike Trudell at Lakers Reporter. All right. Until next week.